Welcome to the Teach Better Talk podcast, your official podcast for the Teach Better Podcast Network, the hub for all things education, brought to you by teachbetter.com. The Teach Better Talk podcast is committed to answering your burning questions through a variety of lenses and bringing new offers to you and your colleagues to help you thrive throughout the school year. My name is Ray Hewart, and we love your questions here on the pod. If you have any questions that you'd love us to consider as topics for future episodes, please share them with us by emailing info@teachbetter.com.
How can we use our genius to dress for success? We are diving into this topic for our second episode. But before we get too far in, I want to give a huge shout out to Andrea, a part of our Teach Better team. Andrea is an amazing member of our team, the creator and co-founder of our Academy program, and somebody, or our ambassador program, I apologize, and somebody who is constantly trying to support other people in finding success. So this couldn't be a better episode to give a huge shout out to Andrea and all the work she does. Another woman that you definitely need to add to your PLN, and somebody who is all focused on success, we'll be getting into today, is an incredible new guest for this episode. Do you mind sharing a little bit about who you are, introducing yourself to our community?
Sure. Hi, I'm Joette Field, and I am multi-role. First of all, wife, mother, grandmother, very important to me. And I've just been blessed to have a great career and a great successful career because I'm in the area of creativity, and which people do not understand that creativity takes discipline, and creativity is a discipline. And that's what I've been teaching in the school systems, writing programs, both throughout my career as a teacher and a consultant. And I've been fortunate enough to be with the Creative Education Foundation, which has afforded me to teach and consult in Brazil and South Africa and write programs for teenagers. So yes, I'm blessed.
Well, I have been eagerly waiting to interview you. So I'm very, very appreciative that you're able to come on Teach Better Talk and share with our community today. You know, our community, our Teach Better family loves learning about new programs, new foundations, new communities that exist outside the Teach Better family to continue to foster their well-rounded development. Do you mind sharing specifically, it sounds like what you've done, being able to travel around the world? What brought you into that? Why is that something that you chose to get involved in? And what did you learn through that experience?
Oh, so much. I've had the most fascinating journey, and I believe the universe paves a path, and you either have the choice to follow it or not. So I received a crazy postcard as I was going into my freshman year at a local university in Buffalo. And it said, "Do you want to be part of a research study?" And the research study is this: can creativity be taught? And when I found out a little bit more about it, I thought, oh my God, it's Alex Osborne, even though he wasn't going to be present because he had since passed. But one of his colleagues was doing some specific research on creativity and how it ties into critical and creative thinking, and how the two are the yin and the yang, which makes success. So after 2 years of this study, there was a lot of testing done. Yes, creativity can be taught because, as I mentioned, it's a discipline. It's a discipline. And after that 2 years, there was a group of us that just couldn't let go. We were like, it was Dr. Sidney Parnes and Dr. Ruth Noller. By the way, Sid was an amazing human being. Ruth Noller worked with Grace Hopper on the first Mark I computer, and she was my mentor. And I was sitting with her one day, and she goes, we're going through photos. And she goes, Joette, you know how they said there's a bug in a computer? Well, it was a bug. It was a moth. And she's got a picture of her and Grace Hopper and the moth in the computer. And I'm like, what? She was an amazing woman who was in the military, a mathematician, and a prodigy musician. What a couple, yeah. So I had all that background. And what we did is there's a Creative Problem Solving Institute that is now in its 60th year. And I've been to like 50 of them and learned so much from really the rock and roll stars of education and creativity. I've just been so privileged to do that. And when the bunch of us couldn't let go, it was an undergrad program. We actually started formulating a grad program. So I'm very proud to say that we put together, with the help of Dr. Parnes and Dr. Noller, a grad program that started in 1978 and is going strong, not only here, but all over the world.
Oh, how powerful to be able to be not only a learner in the experience, but then want to give back and then also continue your learning throughout that process. I know many of our educators here who are listening might be surprised that creativity can be taught. And I know we're getting into a lot of your passion work as this podcast continues, but when you talk about creativity and the ability for it to be taught, I know a lot of educators find that exciting, find that surprising, and are dying to know more. So although we might highlight some of those steps here on the pod, is there any resource that we can point them to that you'd say, oh my gosh, friends, if you want to get started in looking into this space, of course, contact me, but then also where else should they be looking?
The Creative Education Foundation.org. They have done work over the years that is astounding. And as I mentioned, it started in the little core right here in Buffalo. And there are now institutes in France and in South Africa and in Brazil. It's in Spain, in Canada, all over the world. And the basic premise is the creative problem-solving process, of course, that Alex Osborne and Dr. Sidney Parnes developed. But it's what you do with that process. It's right from the beginnings of fact-finding to the application and implementation of the what ifs, what can happen, those types of things. So if you go to the creativeeducationfoundation.org, and if that's not the right website, I will give you one. I will send you one.
I'm sure it's great.
But yeah, and it's just, I just attended my 60th or my 52nd. I'm sorry, it's now 60 years old. And the energy, it's like going home. It's going home to your tribe because you have the most in-depth conversations no matter what track you choose. I started a youth program there, and it's been fun for the kids. I left that a while ago because my full-time teaching gig to make money and support my family was public schools. But then in the summers, that's what I did on the side. And it's just so fantastic. They have the research and they have current data.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit about you choosing to get into education, because obviously this is the topic we're going to continue with our leading question, discussing how to find your genius and utilize it to really dress for success. But before we get into that, why did you become an educator? Why go into the public school system? I mean, obviously to pay the bills. I know many of us need that paycheck, but also why did you choose this space for yourself?
It wasn't something I intended because I looked at the educational field and I started taking formal education courses in college. I'm really sorry to say I didn't get a lot from it. You know, you can get the dynamics that you can pick up in any book. However, what led me into the educational field was Sid Parnes, Ruth Noller, and knowing that if you see every individual and their learning styles for who and what they are, and you give them the tools and the skills, that is success. You're accepting someone where they are. You have the discipline to teach them, which is why creativity can be taught, so to speak. And then they develop who and what they are rather than where people want to fit them in. Mm-hmm. And it's been my passion for years and years and years.
Yes. And I think that so many educators will understand, and that concept will resonate with them, because so many of us have a why that brought us into the field. But then we also have something that has continued to keep us in this space, a passion that we've really been able to see the fruits of our labors and really enjoy the space that we operate in. The element that we are talking about as we move into our second segment today is all about understanding your genius. Do you mind previewing this a little bit for us? I know that the concept is something that many of our community here will be interested in, but what does it mean to find your genius?
Basically, just to put it in regular old terms, is it's your passion. to find out who you are. You know, it was so interesting when you look back at the Aborigines, and their parents give them a name at birth. And then as they grow, they find what they're really good at. So they name themselves. So it would be Peter the poet, or someone the farmer. But they're the ones that cultivated their own, quote, passion or genius. So before pre-Renaissance, the term genius meant your genius. You have a genius, not you are a genius. So taking the time to reflect and have the guidance and mentorship to discover your own genius puts you on a path for success. Plus the tools and techniques to do it.
We are going to continue right along that path. We'll be right back.
Quick pause to talk about the Teach Better Academy. Are you a member of the Teach Better Academy? For $9 a month, you can get access to over 40 courses that are specialized and designed for teacher leaders all across the US and Canada. These not only show you how to break down standards, bond with all of your students, design the best leadership plan, work with teachers with varying personality types, learn more about co-teaching, and anything in between. As you scroll through the Teach Better Academy, you'll see a number of courses that are all asynchronous for your learners and also give your teachers certified credit and badges for the work that they accomplish. Head over to teachbetter.com to learn more about the Academy or just to look at the courses, both free and full workshops, and go explore.
How can we use our understanding of our own genius to dress for success? This week, we are focusing on making sure that we are dressing for success no matter what circumstance we are walking into as we continue through August. And one of the elements that we are highlighting here is not only the ability to physically dress for success, but mentally dress for success. How can you, by knowing yourself really well, better understand what success looks like for you and how you can best set yourself up for it? As we continue this conversation, we are going to dive into your genius. We did a little highlight prior to this segment, but we're going to get far deeper into it. So stick with us here on the pod. So when we discuss finding our genius, I love that you referred back to the term genius being used differently in the past. I know so many of us often refer to our passion being something that moves us. I actually really prefer the word genius because there's an element of celebration that comes with that word. Do you mind speaking to where you feel like it's best to start when diving into this topic for newbies here on Teach Better Talk podcast?
Well, again, it applies to everyone, no matter what your age. So if you have an environment that's conducive to allowing people to be who they are and the tools to guide them a little bit, and it's just a total recipe for success. And as far as dressing for success, if you're balanced, if you look at, I call it PEMS, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And it just goes back to Abraham Maslow, who, by the way, was at the Creative Problem Solving Institute years ago, the Abraham Maslow. And he said you have to have, safety first. And that includes all kinds of safety, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. So if you do that, you are balanced and you will radiate exactly your passion or your genius.
When you reflect on your own personal genius, what comes to mind as you've done this work for so many years?
Balance. Balance is so important. Of course, I'm a Libra, so that may be why. I always have my scales to remind me of that. I'm the yin and the yang. But the most important thing there is the ability to see two different perspectives. And that's why I think we're going through so much in our universe right now. I think it's calling us to stretch. And the most beautiful techniques and the most beautiful foundations of the creative problem-solving process is the concept of divergence and convergence. Divergence meaning that you defer your judgment just for a little while. This freaks people out. I've taught bankers and I have taught people in the consulting industries in Brazil with Eletrobras and Petrobras. And you're telling them, we're going to do a divergent thinking activity. And they're thinking, and you are insane, woman. So
It's so spooky, but I love the challenge. Please continue.
Yeah, the most beautiful part that I didn't think to tell those people way back when is when you diverge, don't worry. You're going to converge. And when I teach, I do a lot of, especially depending on who I teach. I started off by teaching young kids, and we always did all these, kinesthetic types of things. Well, before I know it, we taught divergent thinking and convergent thinking, and worked beautifully when I was doing in South Africa and in Brazil, because you have different ways to help them concretize it. So the concept of divergence and convergence is foundational in creative problem solving. And when you assure the people, don't worry, when you diverge and you come up with crazy ideas or wild ideas, even unrelatable ideas, you have the tools to converge and put in your own filters and stretch your boundaries a little bit to get the filters of others. But at least you're allowing for the different perspectives. And you always have an insurance policy with the creative problem solving process that you'll get to the whole spectrum rather than the narrow-minded view.
Yes, the tunnel vision. I feel like so many of us can fall into, not even intentionally. I think so many of our community is well intended and has good intentions when speaking. But it's human nature to fall into that tunnel vision. I love the challenge to stay open-minded and have the safety net that we will come together in our understanding, even if you start with an open mind. So lots of beautiful things there. Our community is always eager for tactical action steps. It's something that we pride ourselves on here in our Teach Better family. Would you mind giving us a few actionable things that our community can do to begin to look at how they can truly identify their genius?
Okay, their genius?
Sure.
Is it okay? Well, this is a tough one. It sounds so simple, but it's probably the most difficult thing you can do. I mean, take time with yourself. Take your purposeful pause to say, who am I and what am I? And that's almost a daily routine. And it's going to be different for everybody. And even if you're engaged in, start small. If you're engaged in conversations and you find yourself getting tripped up by a different perspective, take that purposeful pause. Think about it, because the most important thing is to reach for your end goal. What are you trying to accomplish? What good is it going to do if you're going to fight back? You need to look at your desired future state and make a path to get there. And I would say probably 90% of the time, it takes a step back and a purposeful pause to really take and process everything.
The reflection of who am I and who do I want to be is something that I feel like would be a beautiful element to reflect on during a morning walk or a moment of clarity. I know that sometimes physically moving my body helps me reflect a little bit more intentionally versus when I sit in bed with a cup of coffee. Sometimes my brain is wild and I can't always put my thoughts together in an authentic way.
That would be me.
I love it. So valuable. Stick with us, friends, as we continue to look at some major takeaways and also some context to make sure that you can move forward with this well beyond the pod. All right, friends, as we continue to reflect and wrap up our conversation on finding your genius so you can dress for success, we are reminding our community here that dressing for success physically is only one part of it. We want you to mentally dress for success as well, and being reflective on who you are, who you want to be, and truly owning your genius is going to be a beautiful way to do that, regardless if you're walking into the first day of school, an interview, a parent meeting, or the first time meeting your incredible students this school year. As we wrap up, I'd love to ask for you to share one major takeaway that you hope that a member of our community listening to the podcast is able to take away from our conversation.
Absolutely. The divergence and convergence is foundational for every single thing you do every single day. And that takes a lot of courage. And, as Brene Brown so beautifully said, the definition of courage is to be vulnerable. So it's really important to get comfortable feeling a little uncomfortable. And then again, you said so beautifully when I was speaking later, you summed it up by saying, it's a safety net. You always have the safety net. You don't have to be afraid to diverge. You don't have to be afraid to take calculated risks. Enumerate your calculated risks. You also said beautifully, you want to get from who I am to who I want to be. That's the 2-point theory. So simple. Here's point A, here's point B. How am I going to get there? And it's all about stretching, looking at perspective, and not being afraid to be that vulnerable, divergent person, because you could always totally get your strength back or your control. Be in control, not controlling.
Ooh, be in control, not controlling. That's a really powerful quote to take away from this as well. I wonder if, though, the two terms we've been talking about with the divergent thinking and convergent thinking, I wonder if that's something, for me, I would really value writing those two words on like a Post-it and putting it on my laptop. That way, during the moments that I won't naturally lean towards using that tool and resource, I have the physical reminder to pause and be intentional. I wonder if that's maybe something that I might need to do after this episode.
I think any kind of physical thing like that, make it into an affirmation. Promise yourself you're going to try at least once a day or once a week, whatever you feel comfortable with. And again, it helps you walk into who and what you are.
I love that. I'm also a total nerd, and I would put it as like my phone background with the iPhone update that they did a few months ago. You can change your background at the blink of an eye, and that would be one that I'd be like, ooh, this week I have a lot of tough conversations. I have a lot of things that might trip me up. I'm going to put my phone background with my 2 vocabulary words and remind myself to stay centered.
Awesome. That's a great start.
I love it. I want to make sure our community here is able to connect with you and the many, many things that you're doing for educators. Do you mind sharing how our community can stay connected to you, whether it be a website, a social media handle, an email, anything in between, whatever you're most comfortable with?
Well, I've kind of backed right down to an email for right now because it just got to be too big. And again, my family is super duper important. And I promised them after all these years, I'd be very present for them. So it's exactly my name, Joette Field at yahoo.com, which my son tells me constantly, Mom, seriously.
I love it. Please make sure you add Joette to your professional learning network. She is doing incredible work in this space, has already done incredible work in this space. And unfortunately, because she's an educator through and through, she will continue to do incredible things in this space, regardless of all of her responsibilities. Joette, thank you so much for being a part of this conversation of Teach Better Talk. And we really, really appreciate you sharing your insight here on the podcast.
Well, thank you for letting me share my passion